powers which had majorly contributed in the art and architecture as well as the cultural activities are necessary to be done in this study. Okay, so here today we are going to study about the Pallavas. Now what does this Pallavas mean? Okay, the word by itself gives an essence of South Indian culture. Okay, Pallavas. Okay, so here there are many of the debates. The debate is, in fact, many of the students get confused ki who were originally the Pallavas. Okay, many of the students are confused ki ma'am, were they the descendants of the Cholas or were they feudatories of the Satavahanas? Okay, so of course the answer is both of them. How? Let us let us clear this confusion. Okay. So I have told you always that while studying the history, whether it is ancient history, whether it is medieval history, whether it is modern history, it's necessary that you first study the timeline of the history. Okay, and as and when we need to study the timeline of the history of ancient India, I have told you that up till the 6th century AD, it is necessary you to study each of the dynasty, each of the major kingdom. Okay, why? Because they have contributed majorly in the political administration, they have contributed in the revenue generation, they have contributed in many of the culture and literature formats. Okay, and in the similar way the UPSC also asks the questions. Okay, so here when we start our study right from 2500 BC, that is IVC, okay, Indus Valley Civilization, we move forward up till Mahajanapadas, and we see that one of the Mahajanapadas, that is Avasti, which was located in the Deccan region, comes into the power as the future Satavahanas, right? So Satavahanas were the one who were at the power during the 1st century. Right, 1st century AD. 1st century AD were the Satavahana period, was the Satavahana period. Okay, now when we talk about the ancient history is at the peak up till the 6th century. Of course, there are many of the texts who talk about that the ancient history existed up till the 8th century. Yes, of course. Some of the text says that the medieval history rightly started from the 8th century. Some text says no, it didn't started from the 8th century, it started from the 6th and half or 7th century. Some say it started from 9th century. But here the period between the 6th century to 9th century is at most important period of ancient history and the early medieval history. Okay, why? Because you need to learn about the shift of the history. Okay, that is why the mature period of ancient India is quite important, and that is why I am taking the minor dynasties also. Okay, so when we talk about the 6th century, okay, when we talk about the 6th century, it were the Chalukyas who were ruling the Deccan region, right? It were the Chalukyas who were really ruling the Deccan region, and the contemporary were of course the Cholas, Cheras, Pandyas, right? Cholas, Cheras, Pandyas in the south. Fine. But question comes, what was the in between? Because in the last lectures we have seen that the Satavahanas merely remained up till 2 to 4th century. What after that? Okay, what after that? Okay, so here after the Satavahanas, now Satavahana had two kinds of feudatories, major two kinds of feudatories. One were the Kadambas, okay, one were the Kadambas and the other were Pallavas. Okay, they were governing the important regions. Now this Pallavas were governing the South Indian region. Okay, the South Indian region majorly known as, okay, majorly known as the Tondai Mandalam, okay, majorly known as Tondai Mandalam, which is present day North Tamil Nadu, okay, and the Kadambas ruled over the Maharashtra and Karnataka region, Okay, Maharashtra and Karnataka region, for which we call it as a Bijapur. Okay, so of course the Kadambas were being defeated by the Chalukyas. Okay, and after that we'll see the development of Chalukyas. But what about the second feudatory? So the second feudatory, once the Satavahanas get declined, okay, the second feudatory would be positioning themselves as an independent ruler of Tondai Mandalam. Okay, Mandalam means, it is a Mandalam means a province, a larger province. Okay, so the name of this Mandalam was the Tondai Mandalam. Okay, so this Tondai Mandalam would be a major province where they would be establishing as the independent power in the South India. Okay, now why this Pallava dynasty is so important? Because it works as a major shift from the ancient India to early medieval period. Okay, why? Because the most important factor of this Pallava dynasty is first the resource availability according to the geographical location. Okay, so here it was Pallava dynasty, right? The contemporary were Chalukyas. And in the south, the Cholas. Okay, and here it is, let's say Ceylon, that is Sri Lanka. Okay, now many students ask me, ma'am, in some of the text, that is in some of the NCRTs, we read that the Pallavas were the descendants of the Cholas. And in some text we read that they were offshoots of Satavahanas, that is feudatories of Satavahanas. Which is true? Okay, which is true? So both are true. How? Let me explain you one by one. Okay, now before Chalukyas there were Satavahanas, right? Before Chalukyas there were Satavahanas. Now when Satavahanas were ruling, they had different governors, they had different feudatories. Now in the last session I have told you that Satavahana had feudal system of administration, right? So when the feudal lords got separated according to the regions and the divisions, they got separated, right? So the Kadambas were overthrown by the Chalukyas. So Chalukya ruled over here. But in the south, if we see, there the Pallavas were the independent feudatories, okay, of the Satavahanas only. But here the question comes, from where did this Pallavas came? Where did they had their origin? Okay, who were their parents? Okay, so here this question is being solved in many of the epics. Okay, like for in stories also and epics also. Like for example, there is a reference material which talks about, now although that reference material is the local reference material, but the poets also, the inscription also tells this about the origin of the Pallavas. Okay, now what according to the inscription it is said that they were descendants of the Cholas. But how they were descendants of the Cholas? Please concentrate over here now. Okay, one of the king of Cholas, okay, one of the king of Cholas, okay, married the princess of Ceylon, that is Sri Lanka, and the child which they had from this marriage, okay, was ruling the Pallava. Okay, so this is how the Pallavas were descendants of the Cholas as well as the feudatories of the Satavahanas. Got the confusion cleared? Okay, again, now this Pallava is a major shift in the South Indian history, South Indian ancient history. Why? Because see, this Pallavas would be making major agricultural development. Okay, secondly, they would be making major cultural development with respect to Dravidian style of architecture. After that, they would be also making major of the administrative style of development, political administrative style of innovations would be seen during this period. Okay, 3-tier governance system, judiciary system, and which is very notable during this period. Okay, so without wasting a single minute further, let us start about the Pallava dynasty. Okay, let us start about the Pallava dynasty. Okay, now just see the contemporary powers. Okay, here, see the Pallava region, okay, extended from Amravati. Now, please remember, Satvahana had the Amravati style of architecture, okay, Amravati school of arts, okay. So, Amravati was a major focal point during the Satvahanas, but it would be shifted to the Kanchi, that is present day Kanchipuram, okay. So, the Kanchipuram would be remaining as the capital of the Pallava, okay. So, here it's Vatapi again, what it is, Vengi, okay. So, again it was being acquired by the Pallavas from the Chalukyas, okay. So Vatapi, then Nandagiri and the Kaveri Pattinam, okay. So this were the extensive, or what we call it as a satellite urban centers which mark the boundary of the Pallava dynasty. Now see the contemporaries of the Pallava. So Chera, Pandya, Chola are the contemporaries. Above the Chalukyas are the contemporaries, and above them the Harsha also. So we have seen in the previous lecture that the Chalukyas had defeated the Harshavardhana also. Okay, so the South Indian powers had grew at a larger scale during the later ancient period. Okay, and we'll see that the South India is becoming richer and richer and more powerful in the political administration. Okay, and the North India would be becoming weaker day by day. Okay, so this will give the open doors for the invaders to come in India. Okay, so this is the later period of ancient India. But before moving to that, let us first concentrate on today's topic, that is Pallavas. Okay. Now, who were these Pallavas? Now, these Pallavas majorly started their independent rule right from the 3rd century itself. Okay, although their rule was at a peak during the 6th century, but they started as an independent players, independent rulers from the 3rd century itself. Of course, they were being in middle after the 4th century. They were being defeated by the Chalukyas. Okay. Which shook their empire completely. But again, in the 6th century, they again acquired that position with the help of major rulers. Okay, so we'll study all those rulers, but before that, let us have some of the background idea about this dynasty. Okay, so it was established empire in the Kondai Mandalam. Kondai Mandalam means a state, okay, a governing state of Kanchipuram. Okay, Tondai Mandalam with the Kanchipuram as a capital, and they became the dominant power only after the 6th century, especially during the Mahendravarman and the Narasimhavarman. Now see the names of the kings, they majorly talk, or they give the analysis or the overview of the Vaishnavite culture. Okay, Vaishnavite culture, Narasimha, Mahendra, okay, these are the names of Vishnu. Okay, so of course this Pallavas would be also carrying out the Vedic culture. Okay, this would be also carrying out the Vedic culture. They would be also considering themselves from the Ganga dynasty. Okay, and they would be also again turning towards the Shaivism. Okay, but most majorly in South Indian states, you will find that they are tilted towards the Vaishnavism. Beyond that, we'll also find that the Jainism is also being present, but not that more, which was present in the Chalukya or the Satvahanas. Okay, so yes, this Pallavas were in the constant hostilities, in the constant wars with the above Chalukya power also, and the below Chola, Chera and Pandyas also. Okay, so yes, this history is quite interesting. Okay, so Pallava dynasty, okay, okay, so Pallava dynasty, the descendants of the Pallava dynasties, okay, were the origin of the Chola dynasty. Okay, the Chola king married the Naga princess of Mani Pallavam. Okay, she was identified with Jaffna. Jaffna, what is Jaffna? The Sri Lankan island is called as the Jaffna island. Okay, so they were descendants of, half descendants of Sri Lanka also, and half descendants of the Cholas also. Okay, the son born out of this marriage was made the king of the Tondai Mandalam, that is the Pallava dynasty, and it was founded as a Pallava. Okay, after that we'll see that the Satvahanas conquered the Tondai Mandalam. Okay, Tondai Mandalam during the 2.5 century, okay, 2.5 century, in the half of 2nd century, okay. And then the Pallavas became the feudatories of the Satavahanas, okay. So here the Pallava dynasty became the independent after the decline of the Satavahanas only in the 3rd century. So yes, the history of the Pallava started from the 3rd century, but they gained the peak only in the 6th century, okay. So who was the founder of the Pallava? The major founder of the Pallava is the Simha Vishnu, okay, Simha Vishnu. Although before that, now Simha Vishnu is from the 6th century, okay, he's from the 6th century. But before that, we'll also have the different major rulers who started from the 3rd century itself. Now let's see who were they. The first was Sivaskanda Varman, okay. Now he comprised of the Kanchipuram, okay, Kanchipuram village and Andhrapat. Andhrapat means today's Andhra Pradesh plus the northern Tamil Nadu, okay, and some surrounding district, okay. So his kingdom consisted of the officials from the Prakrit records. So the Prakrit plus Sanskrit would be again present over here, okay. Prakrit and Sanskrit would be again present over here. Why? Because they believed in the Vedic culture. They believed in the Vedic culture. They believed in the debates and the discussions which were present in the Upanishads. Okay, so that is why they would be having the Ashwamedh Yagya and all yajnas also. In fact, the Purana text also talks about major of the inscriptions being presented by the Pallavas, okay. Okay, now the next king is Vishnugopa, okay. Now Vishnugopa during the 4th century. Now before Vishnugopa there were many kings, no doubt, but they were not that successful in expansion in the Pallava dynasty. Now the Vishnugopa was one of the major of them, okay, and he was defeated by the Samudragupta. Okay, he was defeated by the Samudragupta, and for more than half of a century Pallavas were typically destabilized due to this Samudragupta ka war, okay. Now after that we'll see only in the 6th century, that is when again the Simha Vishnu will come into power, okay, come into the power during the 6th century, okay. He would be defeating, okay, defeated the 3 Tamil kingdoms of Pandya, Chera and Chola, okay. So here the Pallava kingdom would be expanded in the southern direction. Beyond that, he also extended beyond the Kanchipuram, okay. He also extended beyond the Kanchipuram. In fact, he was overwhelmed with the Ceylon, okay. He was overwhelmed with the Ceylon, and he would be tying a good relations with the Ceylon, okay. He would be going to Sri Lanka, again having a good amount of agreements and deals with this Sri Lankan kings, okay. And in a quarter of the 6th century, okay, he used to have a good relation, okay, with the Sri Lankan people, and that is why he was also called as Avanimsa, okay, by the Ceylon people. Avanimsa means are one of the lion guest, okay. Avanimsa, or it is also called as the Avni Simha, okay. Avni Simha, okay, a warlike king which is attended by the 2 queens, okay, you can write it down, okay. Avani Simha or Avan Simha, okay. The meaning of this word is a warlike king who is attended by the 2 queens, okay. So after that he will move towards the northern region, Now let's suppose this is the Pallava dynasty and they have acquired Chera, Chola, Pandya ka region also, okay. Now they will move above, okay, and they would be building the major temples, okay, major temples over here, and one of their temple is nothing but the Mahabalipuram ka temple, which was known as the Adi Varaha Mandap. Okay, the Adi Varaha Mandap was being constituted by this Simha Vishnu. Okay, by the Simha Vishnu. After that, we'll see that the Mahendra Varman, okay, Mahendra Varman would be following his path. Okay, so he was a famous ruler of the 7th century. Okay, so he also had the wars with the Chalukyas. Okay, Mahendra Varman I. Okay, so I have told you that during the Pulakesin II, okay, he had the war with the Chalukyas. Okay, during Pulakesin II. Pulakesin II. In fact, he defeated the Pulakesin II. Of course, after the child of Pulakesin II again regained the territory, but during Pulakesin II, he had defeated the Pulakesin II. Okay, so Mahendra Varman was one of the strongest ruler of Pallava dynasty. Beyond that, he excavated solid temples, okay, from the rocks. Okay, so that is why he was being given the title of Bhagavad Jijuka. Okay, Bhagavad Jijuka. Okay, one of the Sanskrit work, Matta Vilasa Prashanam. Matta Vilasa. Although I know these words are quite heavy for you to get it grasp, but these are some of the important activities you need to do when you are doing the preparation for preliminary examination. Okay, Matta Vilasa. Okay, Matta Vilasa. Okay, Matta Vilasa. It is a text which gives the title to the Mahendra Varman. Okay, now Mahendra Varman I was initially a Jain. Okay, a Jain follower. After that, he switched to the Shaivism. So here, from when he is switching from Jain, okay, he is switching from Jain to Shaivism. Okay, so this tells us the tolerance values which are present during that time. Okay, in fact, the Shiv temple at Tiruvadi, okay, Shiv temple at Tiruvadi tells us this conversion. Tiruvadi tells this conversion of Mahendra Varman I from Jain to Shaivism. Okay, so the next king is Narsimha I. Oh, okay, Narsimha Varman I. So he avenged his father's defeat by defeating the powerful Chalukya Pulakesin II. Okay, and again he acquired that northern territory of the Pallavas. Okay, after that he came back to the Vengi. Where is Vengi? At the western side. Okay, at the western side, and he had naval expeditions to the Ceylon, that is Sri Lanka. So the Mahendra Varman I and Simha Vishnu made a good relations with the Sri Lankan, and he took those relations forward with the Sri Lanka. Okay, by having the naval expedition. Now what are the naval expedition? Like training the naval soldiers, military people. Okay, so that is naval expedition. Okay, so after that the Narsimha I also was known as the Rajasimha. Okay, Rajasimha means a lion sitting as a king. Okay, Rajasimha, his region is mostly peaceful. Why? Because again he is a tolerant. Okay, he would be having the Vaishnavite faiths also, he would be having the Shaivite faiths also being followed in his reign. Okay, so he was more inclined towards the development of art and architecture. So again the Coromandel coast would be having more development. Okay, building the noble temples like Kailashnath. So Kailashnath is the Shaivite temple at Kanchipuram and the shore temple at the Mamlapuram. So just see the images of this. So this is Kailashnath temple. See the architecture over here. Okay, see the architecture over here, how intrinsically it is being developed. Okay, there are lions, there are tigers being depicted on this. Okay, after that this is Vishnu sculpture being depicted upon it. The Vishnu also, but inside it is Shiv Lingam. Okay, inside it is a Shiv Lingam. So the mixture of Shaivite and the Vaishnavite is being present over here. Again, see the tip of the temple, how it is. Okay, it is extremely sculpted. Okay, resembling the Dravidian style of architecture. Now here the Dravidian style of architecture would be at a peak during the Pallava dynasty. Okay, this is the major outcome of the study. Okay, so please remember the Kailash Nath temple at Kanchipuram. After that, it is a shore temple. Now why it is called shore temple? Because it is located at the seashore. Okay, now here also you will find that this sea water is quite salty. Now in the last lecture when we were discussing about the Chalukyas, I have said that political meetings were being held at the temples. Okay, the political meetings in the South India were being held at the temples. Okay, so that is why you will see that the people who are coming over here and meeting over here, they won't be using the salted water, they would be using fresh water. And evidences also say that the education system was at such a high peak that these temples also had the educational institutions nearby. Okay, and that is why you will see the construction of the lakes are being done. Now see, this is a lake. Okay, this is a lake, underground lake. Okay, below the land. Okay, so this is underground lake which has a fresh water. Okay, so this is the architectural planning of this temple. Now see here, see the structures, sculptures present on the wall. These are the cows, Nandis. Okay, so again it again resembles the Shaivism, and under say they are Vishnu. Okay, so this is how Mahabalipuram temple was being developed during the Pallava dynasty. Okay, so after that the next important ruler is Nandivarman. Okay, the Nandivarman was one of the last important king of the Pallava dynasty. Okay, he also saw the renewal of the struggle of between the Chalukyas and the Pallavas. Okay, after him there was Aparijit Varman. Okay, after him it was Aparijit Varma. Okay, who was being defeated by the Chola king Aditya I. Okay, Aparijit Varman was the last ruler. But if you are asked about the significant last ruler, then he is Nandivarman. Okay, Nandivarman was a good kind of a king who had maintained the supremacy between the Chalukyas and the Pallavas, Cold War. Okay, so during this it was a Cold War because it was also a decline of Chalukyas during that time. Okay, but during the Nandivarman, the dominance was of Pallavas. Okay, and when it was a time of the Aparijit Varman, okay, he was a weak ruler after the Nandivarman, and he was being defeated by Aditya I of the Chola king. Okay.